Hey, what's up, everybody? Mr. BuildWealth. I'm back at it again. If this is your first time joining me, I'm here to share information and resources that can help you get started with building wealth. So, before I get started, as always, I've been making sure to punch in my website so that way, if you want to check me out, see what I'm up to, check out the buildwealthmovement.com. I have a lot of great information and resources on that website. And if you want to chop it up, fill out the contact us section at the bottom and I'll reach out. So, the topic for this session is student loans versus investing. Now, this topic comes up quite a bit because most people I talk to have student loans, and some have a little bit, some have a lot of it. Now, the problem comes where you're thinking about investing, but you're also thinking about, I need to pay off this debt. And the conversation usually involves thinking about all of your debt in relation to just the student loan. So for people who have credit card debt, a car loan, maybe a mortgage and student loans, you may have to take a different approach because you have quite a few different items that you're having to pay on. But let's say you are the person who just has the student loan. And I've talked to quite a few people recently who they have federal student loans, which means they don't have to make a payment for a pretty long time. And they're still like being very aggressive with paying off the student loan. And so I don't fault you for doing that, but I think about investing because these same people who say, I want to focus on paying off my student loan, but also want to make sure I'm investing. And my thought is you should be doing both. That's just my personal preference. Like, I think you should do both. I think you should always be paying off your debt or thinking about being aggressive with paying off debt. But if you don't have to make a payment, why don't you just use that money to invest? And I know it's a little strange, right? Some people just don't want to think about it from this standpoint. But if the government is saying my federal loans, or I don't have to make a payment, I think until like September, why don't you apply all that money from your student loan to like investing and investing in something? Like, I'm not going to tell you exactly what you want to do or should do because you got options. But I got to think about, I have a debt. I got that. I got this debt. It's a student loan. I have let's call this extended grace period where I don't need to be making payments because the government has said I don't have to. So if we reallocated those funds, then maybe you're paying $200-300 a month to your student loan, but no payment is required. So let's put those $200 or $300 a month to investing. Maybe that's the option you consider. But here's a story. Now, I may have shared this before, but I like to share this because this is how you could maybe pay off that student loan, and it's by investing. So there was a gentleman I read about, this was some years ago, and there are plenty of stories like this where people who had never invested before, who were just trying to get into the market, got in. And they got lucky from a timing standpoint to where they were investing when the market was down. And so they're starting their journey at the bottom, but when the market is down, shares are cheap. And so the guy started buying stocks and the market went up. And so he was in grad school at the time, but he had a few dollars. And so he was like, I'm just going to start trying to learn how to invest. So fast forward, he graduates, he has a student loan, and about 5 years or so after, he was working now 5 years, but he has a job. He still has a student loan. He's been investing the entire time. But because the stock market went up, at that 5-year mark, he pretty much had broken even. So the investment account was pretty much equal to the student loan. So he had a decision to make. Do I liquidate my entire investment account to pay off the student loan? Or do I keep investing, letting it appreciate, and keep making my minimum payments on the student loan? And so he chose the latter. And so what it did was it gave him some freedom. So his investments continued to grow. And so he began making bigger payments onto the student loan. And so he initially, eventually got rid of the student loan. It took some time. But in his mind, he said, the student loan isn't that bad of a debt. The interest rate was super low. And he knew that he would be able to pay it off if he had to at a moment's notice. He could liquidate money from his investments. So the problem that I see people have is sometimes we're all for or against one thing or the other, And I want you to start thinking about like I can be paying down debt aggressively and I can be investing. And the reason you want to not totally forget investing is because of time. So compounding interest is incredible. So if you tell yourself you're going to be aggressive on paying down your or paying off your student loan and you don't invest any money during that time, and I'm assuming you're not going to pay off your student loan in a year. And some people may if you're very aggressive and you make a high wage. But generally speaking, it's going to take you some years. And so if you delayed investing because you said, I'm going to start investing when I get rid of this debt, and that's okay. But think about the time factor of you're wasting all this time. I'm paying off the loan, paying off the loan, paying off the loan, paying off the loan, paying off the loan. And then you finally get to investing. You've missed this time frame. And let's say you're like the gentleman I just spoke about. Let's say it's during a downturn where you could have bought stuff for cheap and then it would have appreciated. So you could keep funding an investment, but the appreciation is where you make the money most times, right? That's why people love investing. It's money you did not have to work for. So I know the student loans have people all up in arms, and I'm continuing to see people delay investing because they're too focused on the student loan. I want people to understand that you will pay off the student loan. I know it's more of a personal, like I have to do it, it's a principle that you live by. But when you start thinking about building wealth, you shouldn't be wasting time when you could be investing. And so if you are one of these people who solely focus on paying off the student loan and you're neglecting the investment part, I want you to reconsider. Maybe not all of it, but again, if you're dropping $500, $1,000 on your student loan every month, I want you to think about, could I potentially invest? And over time, my investments will perform accordingly. And then maybe I'll have a bigger chunk of change to put down on the student loan. So I just want to, share this story with you because we should not have tunnel vision when it comes to our financial plan. We need to always be open to ideas, be open to strategies, be open to hearing success from people who may not look like you, who you may not associate yourself with. And that's the problem when I run into these people who are like, it's all my student loan and I'll invest later. But the people who you're talking to are only telling you that you should pay off that student loan, get rid of that debt. That's not bad advice. But when you think about the big picture, you cannot get the time back. Time is the factor here. So you can be paying debt and paying it aggressively, but you can also at the same time be doing a little bit to the investment. And at some point, it should kind of shift. You're paying, the same amount on the debt and the debt is going down, but now you have more money to invest. And so this is just, again, one scenario because for somebody they say, well, if I pay off the student loan, maybe I need to save money. Same thing applies. You can do both. The idea is, and this is where I find most people struggle, we're almost afraid of slicing up some dollar amount to be applied to multiple things. So in your brain, you say, I have $500 to do something. And for most people, all they can think of is 500 is going to this, and that's it. And so we've neglected all the other things that go into a very solid financial game plan. But your 500 is going to one thing. It's okay to split up that 500 and say, hey, if I got 5 things, then maybe everything can get $100. Doesn't have to be an even split. But we have to start thinking about and. And is the operative word I want people to think about who are so caught up in paying off student loans that they are just missing out on time in the market. And that's where it gets good from an investing standpoint, is that the longer you are in it, the better off you'll be in the long run. It'll actually be more beneficial than the feeling you'll get just from paying off your student loan. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. If you kept investing, and let's say you had to put it to the test, and you had 20 years. You were investing for 20 years. You were paying off a debt. When that debt hit zero, you're probably going to feel relieved that you don't owe anybody money. But that investment account is going to make you so much more excited, and you're going to wish you would have done more. Just giving y'all the facts. So if you have friends who are solely focused on paying down debt and are just neglecting the rest of their financial plan, please have them call me. Please have them set up a 15-minute call, because I gotta talk some sense into you. You know, I love the fact that people are focused on paying down debts, but let's just think about it the proper way of, you're gonna have it for a little while, and that's okay. But in the meantime, don't forget about investing your money. So if this is you that I'm speaking to, holla at me. Hit the link in my bio, hit the BuildWealthMovement.com, check me out. But also too, you know, these are some of the stories that I share on my new YouTube channel, the Build Wealth Movement, but my Build Wealth observations. These are like stories that I've been sharing for a long time, stories that I've come across where it's kind of the same stories. It's just different people on different days. But Build Wealth observations are on my YouTube channel. The link is also in my bio, and just listen to some of the stories that I'm sharing, because these are real stories, real people. And I want people to start to share these stories, because it's not enough for me to come on here and just tell these stories, because it's only going to reach a certain number of people. But if you're sharing these videos, if you're sharing the content, if you're telling them who told you this, that's very helpful in terms of living out my mission of disrupting generational poverty. I know a lot of, and the reason I'm saying this is because I know a lot of wealthy people who have debt, but they're so wealthy in terms of having assets that having a little bit of debt doesn't matter. For most people, we have way more debt and very little assets. So part of me disrupting generational poverty is flipping that. I don't care if you have debt, but I want you to have a gang, like a shit ton of assets, so that debt feels like very little. Like I want the assets to be so large and so grand that even you having a student loan or a credit card debt or whatever, it's almost irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. But until more of us can build assets, and that's where investing is going to come in, we're always going to think, well, I'm just making enough to pay somebody back, but I'm never going to thrive. And I want you to thrive. That's Mr. Build Wealth's goal. I want you to thrive. And if you find yourself needing somebody to help you along this journey, I'm available. I'm not hiding. And if it's not with me, please go out and speak to someone about your financial plan. Like, I need you to have a good plan in place. So, with that, I bid you all farewell, and I will catch you next time around.